First thing on the agenda, approval of minutes.
Anybody needs a copy?
You want to take the minutes? Scan them,
That's all one.
two pages. Okay. Right, take a minute, scan them and. Right, the next thing we're going to talk about is select representatives. Oh, excuse me, is there a motion to approve the minutes in red?
Second.
All right.
It's approved.
It's approved. All right, select representative to go before council to discuss responsibility changes.
So I know we spoke about it last month. That the recommended changes of responsibility were voted on the past board. If you as the chairwoman feel that PTAC is heading in a good direction, work scale wise, because I know you want to change some more things, you can choose to want to keep everything the same, or if you want to continue those recommended changes that the former committee voted for.
Okay, what I would like to do is discuss with these gentlemen what the changes were. Do you have
I don't have a copy.
a copy of list? That's going back a number of months. One of the things that we had talked about in previous meetings is that we did not feel that PTAC does enough. We're just here. And one of the reasons why I feel that way is because, you know, Linda Roper, she's in charge of the City of Beaufort Parks. We're Parks and Tree Advisory Commission. And she does a great job, notwithstanding that. And then, you had the big park in Mossy Oaks, Southside Park, and that was pretty much governed by a local committee of people who lived in the neighborhood. And so we were not involved in that at all. There's a new park that has been named along Boundary Street, and they're in the process of figuring that out, hopefully raising money, maybe getting some grants for it and moving forward with that. But so with us being on the Parks and Tree Advisory Commission, my feeling is that, we're not active enough. I mean, tell me what y'all think. You've been on this committee for a kind of short period of time, but we just don't do very much. So, back to, did you find?
Yeah, I do have it here. So one of the things that was crossed out was in the, I believe it's written under PTAC's responsibility was coming up with a urban forestry management plan. Management plan shall define the species of trees to be utilized as street easement right of way and park trees when appropriate. It will specify the best practices and horticultural requirements for the planting, maintenance, and preservation of said trees. And that, I believe, if I remember correct, that the committee felt that that would be above the kind of, it's more, you thought it'd be more planning, because obviously planning works with community development. They're working on the codes, community codes. So they felt that that was best suited for planning department, just because they had the funding, they had the resources, that we would still assist and help with their planning, but they didn't want to be held responsible for doing the entire plan. Because as it's written, PTAC will develop and come up with a plan. It doesn't say anybody else will.
My understanding is that hi, we're happy to have you. Thank you, sir. Tell me your name, please.
Diane Farrelly.
Oh, well, welcome to our meeting. My understanding in discussing an urban forestry plan is that it is very comprehensive. And basically not being a certified arborist, I just don't know if that is beyond our scope, us doing this urban forestry plan. I personally don't know what the first thing to do in pursuing that is.
I still think it's very important of being involved in the process.
I
I'm not saying that you need to take charge completely, but I think being incorporated in the process is extremely important.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I would love for us to be part of that process too. My understanding is that in doing this plan, I mean, you hire a professional to do it and it's many, many thousands of dollars.
Yes. A lot. It's a full tree canopy assessment, tree inventory. There's a lot more. There's tree codes that get changed.
In the whole city of Beaufort is, you know.
So it
it's a big
wouldn't
deal.
just be one meeting. This would be the work of probably long months, if not possibly a couple of years. It was one of the things that you wanted to keep was it shall provide the city manager as requested with an assessment of city parks and will make recommendations as to improvements, decommissioning, and or the commissioning of parks and public open spaces within the city. It shall be responsible for the planning of annual Arbor Day celebration and will recommend necessary procurements. Then you want to change in there, because it's crossed out, it will be responsible for the maintenance of the required data for recertification by the Arbor Day Foundation of the city as Tree City USA, because obviously we submit most of the paperwork, we have most of the data of all the trees that get pruned, planted, taken down, removed, all the funding that we have to put as public works.
Right, so we were looking
So, yeah,
to cross that off,
yes,
just because
and that-
you guys take care of it.
and that it's like you took the responsibility of handling the paperwork and the application, but you're still incorporated because you're still in charge of planning Arbor Day. So it's still the same thing, it's just that it made more sense for us since we had all the data. And obviously, we can't share city budget information with the public unless by city council, so.
Unless we have a secret clearance.
Yeah. So,
So do you follow that? Okay,
I just had a comment about the other one, the urban forest master plan. So some of this is repetitive. So before I got on the board, I said, well, let me learn about trees. So Dallas, Texas, they have their urban forest master plan. I was fascinated with Dallas because they have the best Parks and Rec website I've ever seen, but to keep it short, some of these big cities, I'm not surprised that they don't have urban forest master plans. And Dallas created their first one in 2021. And it's about 70-80 pages. They had the help of, I think it's called the Texas Tree Foundation that covers the whole state. It was an excellent document for me to read because I wanted to learn about trees. It was the right document to read. It was had a variety of stuff, and then I read the whole thing except for I skimmed over the part where they had their own personalized goals for the city of Dallas that were kind of dry. Wasn't much to learn from that, but yeah, and it said it had everything in there, stuff from like Atlanta has the highest tree canopy percentage at any big city. There was something else in there that was most that I remember from memory. I wrote down all the key points when I read it, and then another one was if you look out your hospital room window and see a tree, you spend less days than no tree. But it's a great document. Yeah, so that was great to read. Thanks.
there's a lot of, through the various tree seminars that we attend throughout the year, there's a lot of information out there. The state forestry also pushes a lot of grants that the state funds. So there's a lot of avenues that we can take if this was something, but obviously the urban forestry plan is something that the city and the city council would have to push for. It would have to be something that they would want to implement for us to put this into motion, because it's a lot of man hour, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of money that has to be funded to be able to implement and design this plan. So,
It's
that's-
very time consuming
it
too.
is very time
So
consuming.
would our goal be to present to council why we want to do it and how we plan on doing it?
Well, I think-
Or would we just say we wanna do it?
The way I would question is, it's written into your responsibilities, so is there an active sitting member on council or mayor that wants an urban forestry plan, wants to look into an urban forestry plan? Because it's not just you pick an urban forestry plan, there's different types of plans. So some have like a 2 to 3 year plan where they say, we want to plant so and so many trees to get our tree canopy up to a certain percentage. Then there's ones that are for 10 to 15 years that goes throughout the whole lifetime, and then you have a management plan, which is just a consistent kind of guideline that you follow. It's almost like a tree ordinance, but like a hybrid version of it, where you would follow that guideline throughout the lifespan of the trees. So not just 10 to 15 years, but beyond that.
Different price differences.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different options. It's not just, hey, we want an urban forestry plan. Well, what type do you want? Do you have a 3 year and a 5 year plan? Do you want a 10 to 15 year plan, or do you want the life cycle plan?
Sure. The system is for taking public comment.
Can we wait until the new business public comment?
Yeah, you're supposed to, we're under Robert's rules in this as well, right? Yeah, so after board discussion, but before voting, you're supposed to call. for
So I was like, we were trying to figure out where the meeting was, so there's.
public. In 4 years, there's never been a public comment in a PTAC meeting, but that's.
It's okay. It's the first time. Okay, so those were the 3 things.
Yeah, and then, so you also shall make recommendations to the city council for prioritized allocation of monies from within the city's tree fund account on an annual basis. Final, it shall provide the city manager as requested an assessment of city parks and will make recommendations as to, oh, we already talked about that, I think it's just repeated, about decommissioning, commissioning. Rationale, there is not, has never been a city of Beaufort urban forestry plan. There may be some interest on the part of the city of Beaufort in creating such a plan, but it will be a work of years, not months. 2 was only city employees have access to a city database that includes the required information for Tree City USA recertification reports. PTAC is not able to alter or maintain information in the city database. And that was the approved of you, Mr. Tamla Connor, Gordon Fritz, and Victoria Burst.
What day was that email?
This is all the way back to June 13th, 2024. Would you like me to forward this to you?
Would you please?
Yep.
Actually, forward it to all of us.
Okay.
Would you please? Okay, so the question is, do we want to add to this? Do we want to not include some of these provisions? You know, is everybody comfortable with this? In presenting this to city council.
Yeah, I'm comfortable.
So we have the comprehensive urban forestry plan, the assessment of the city parks, planning for Arbor Day. Then recommendations to city council for
the responsibility changes.
the responsibility changes, right?
So this group would have to vote to push it forward, and then you'd have to select a representative for the meeting that they would schedule. So I don't know if it would be the next council meeting or a future date, but as soon as you select, I can let Dave know that. That person's been selected to represent PTAC. If all 3 of you wanted to attend, you're more than welcome, but if only one was selected, we need at least one representative of PTAC board.
Right, and do you want to add anything to this? Is there anything that comes to mind that you would like to include? Okay.
Well, if it's not listed as a responsibility, does that mean we couldn't do it, or we could? I mean, it's, not sure how that works, but.
If it's
So-
encompassing,
So are you saying if you vote on these changes and then,
are we restricted only to these items? As the duties and responsibilities of PTAC?
no, because I still think there's still more, obviously, you're supposed to have parks brought before you, the planning process.
Well, it says
Anytime
the
there's tree-
assessment of city
The
parks.
assessment of the city parks should be brought to your attention, so. Volunteers, park that they're trying to build should be brought to you, south side should be brought to you. So those things are still incorporated, because there's still parks and trees,
Mhm.
throughout any city-owned park right away, so everything that falls in that is supposed to be brought to you.
Okay. That's yes. Okay,
Probably working out.
all right, so we have those items. You guys comfortable with that?
Yes.
I'm good.
All right, so, is there a motion to approve these items to present to the council?
Yeah.
Second,
Second.
okay, motion's carried. So the next thing that we are gonna talk about,
Oh, yeah, after.
oh, well, go ahead,
Okay,
please.
because I'm here in terms of what you're talking about right now. And I guess my comment is that I would hate to see these responsibilities just dropped rather than maybe reassigned in terms of looking towards an urban forestry plan,
Yeah.
because there are so many code amendments that apply to the canopy coverage and all of that, that we don't have anything to go by. So I didn't want to see it just dropped. I agree that it doesn't make sense for you to do it when there isn't one. Can't be responsible for something that you don't have. On the other hand, I don't want to see it right, so that's my comment.
You would like to see it implemented. You
I would like to
see
see
it
a forestry plan implemented and have it, yes, and then have the responsibility be someone's to maintain. I mean, it directly ties into a lot of the codes in our, a lot of the codes and the amendments to the codes that are being discussed now at planning commission.
Right. Yes, indeed. That many years ago, I remember that PTAC did a walk through most, if not all, the neighborhoods and counted the trees. We counted the trees, and at that time, there were 4 certified arborists on
board.
the board. I know, big difference, huh? And there was a lot to learn. I mean, I learned a huge amount. But we did that, but that was years, 10 years ago. It was quite some time, maybe more than 10 years ago, so implementing an urban forestry plan is, I mean, it's a big deal. I think I don't know how much it costs, tens of thousands of dollars, doesn't it?
I think some urban forestry plans fall into anywhere from $100,000 to $250,000.
It's staggering, yes.
Wow.
Like I said, it depends obviously on the type of plan you're looking for. If
Right,
you have a short-term plan, but then that short-term plan is constantly being renovated and changed. Obviously, as ordinance go by or locations get picked up by the city of Beaufort or annexed into the city of Beaufort, things get updated. But if you went to a 10 to 15-year plan, it buys you more time, obviously, money line item goes up with that. But then if you have the management plan, you're talking about the entire life cycle. So that's a full assessment.
so probably,
And that's why the state forestry is very important, just because they have the resources to get us grants. So that way the cost wouldn't be astronomical for the city if it was something that they wanted to venture into.
Are there not any type of requirements or recommendations for being a tree city to have such a plan?
So you don't have to have an urban forestry plan, you have to have an active tree board or a city manager, we have both. You have to spend with our population, it depends. If your population is higher, your capita per would be a lot higher. Ours is about like $2 per capita. So there's a certain amount of tree work, tree planted that you would have to go through. You'd have to submit the application, have the funding to prove that you planted a certain amount of trees throughout the year and you spent a certain amount of money on watering, tree initial care, tree removals, and you take all that information, and that's pretty much Tree City USA's requirements. There's only about 4 or 5 requirements, but it's not to say that Tree City USA doesn't change their protocol moving forward to where that maybe forces us to create such one.
I know there are impact fees and mitigation fees
Yes.
now that are collected. And from what I understand from
Planning.
that these funds are just kind of in a fund somewhere hanging out and there's discussion about an amendment to that and how to use that and whatever, so perhaps that could be part of
Something that we
the
could do.
grant, yes, because take some of that and actually use it for the good of trees.
That was a topic that was brought up before y'all got on the board about where's the money and how much is in the fund. And, you know, according to PTAC's responsibilities, we're supposed to manage this fund, but where's the money and who's managing it, right? And we never got that answer.
No, it's really rather commingled is what I've heard, and that I have not been able to look at it and say what, how much is in this fund.
If you look at like Greenville, Columbia, and you look at their forestry plans, you'll see that in there, they do have a designated tree fund for mitigation and everything.
We're supposed to,
Yeah, it's
according to, you know, what I've read, we're supposed to have a designated tree fund.
Yeah, from a financial perspective, love to know if we're gonna look into implementing something like this, what's a budget? You know, what are we looking at, because that's gonna be the main
Thing, yeah.
factor on, okay, let's research this point, or let's go forward, like, let's try to go forward with this one.
Well, it lets you know where to start. It lets you know what you're getting into.
Gotta know
If
what
you,
you have.
if you know what budget you have, you can understand what type of plan you can go for. There's no point in trying to shoot for a management plan that serves over the lifetime of the trees, and you don't have the funding for it, because that's a lot of waste of time and resources. So,
Well, you know, here's something else that if you wanted to, we could add to this is management of our tree fund. You know, we could present that to city council too. And then explain to them, we're not sure how much is in the tree fund because it's not separate from the other, you know, the other monies. Question, is that is a question. Is that something you want to include in this presentation to city council?
Yeah, I definitely think it's
Am I
something,
opening a Pandora's box?
no, I mean,
well, even if you got just clarification on, okay, we wanna do this plan, where would the money come from for this specifically? It's like getting that answer at least.
well,
So
one.
you could ask the question, like the overall question.
It opens up the conversation too, because it lets you understand that if, well, maybe there's been talks about it, maybe they've had plans in the last couple of months that they wanted to implement or look into in their forestry plan. So it opens that conversation up and it gets the ball rolling in a certain direction. Because if nobody talks about it, it's not gonna,
It's not gonna
nobody's gonna think about it.
ever, let's,
So city council would put it on the work session. Is that where they would talk about it first, or?
It'd either be it probably would go to work session first and then obviously the steps after that. As soon as you start allocating money and trying to budget funding, it would probably go to regular council sessions. Both the same day, I think.
what
Work sessions
policy
are 5 and then regular council is 7.
All right, so who wants to go and present this to city council.
I nominate Isaac
Yeah, I mean,
or Diane.
I do like the idea of going as a group. I do like the idea of going as a group if that's something that, if that was an option that was said, mainly because you have the tenure as far as you've been dealing with this, we're fairly new. I would be more than happy to speak, but you know, I would definitely want somebody there that has a little bit more knowledge than I do on everything.
I think it'd be helpful if you were there, if they have questions about a comprehensive urban forestry plan. Because I think that you have a better background than we do to talk about it.
Because I know
Yeah.
Nate's there, but Nate will probably, I think the last time when we voted to bring it up to council, he. That's something you want to absolutely.
But, and I say that just by virtue of the fact that I didn't know that there were 3 different directions you could go in. I mean,
Yeah.
I am not familiar enough with it.
No, I didn't know until, I think it was 2 years ago, we attended the Holly Beach Tree Seminar. And they had, I think, it was either Greenville or Columbia just revised theirs. And they went through everything that they went through, the funding, the grants that they got for it. But they also said a lot of people don't know in this process, when you're starting it, you think that you just need one plan, but there's multiple different facets of the plan. You go to different styles that kind of work towards the growth of your city, the direction you want to go. Certain areas are different than others. Obviously, the trees that we have here are going to be different than they have in Piedmont and certain species. So it just depends, because our landmark trees are different than up there. So having that information and knowing there's different directions we can go, but still having an urban forestry plan, it's just deciding, okay, here's your options. Where do you feel the city is best fit moving forward? And it could start as a 3 to 5, and then after that, you go, you know, this really works well. We like the direction it's going. Let's implement a 10 to 15, and then after that, or maybe let's go into a full management.
Okay. All right. So the next thing that we would need to know is a date.
Yeah, so I will let Nate know that it was
Okay.
approved and that you'll be moving forward and wanting to speak in front of council. And then we will see if it'll be the next month's agenda, which I believe is the 8th, right? So.
Yeah, it's April 8th.
April 8th. And then if not, if it's the next month, but I will definitely let you know beforehand. I can get you an answer. Hopefully by early next week.
Okay, that sounds good. I know that in May, I'm out of town the middle part of May for 2 weeks.
Adam, would you know if there's a specific website to go to research the
If
different
you go
types?
to the South Carolina State Forestry, you'll be able to find.
Yeah, I recommend, even though it's not South Carolina, I recommend the
No,
one,
it is good.
the one in Dallas.
Yeah.
Like, that's the only one I've ever read. I've never been to Texas. I switched planes in Fort Worth as close as I got to
Yeah.
Texas.
That's right.
It was, yeah, they had a lot of help with that, and the Texas Tree Foundation, I'm sure they're an impressive group. And I took notes. I don't have those notes with me, but I did take notes on that. Yes, it's worth the read.
It's very good though, because you learn how other states and other counties, they handle mitigation scales. They handle their ordinances. You see what kind of works for them. And you'll see some, I think the state forestry also has where most of them are rated based on the strength of their. And because I know Port Royal gets a lot of praise for their tree ordinance, how strict it is, mitigation scale for them. So there are a lot that are used in most places. There were some from Lake Georgia in our meeting that they talked about just because of how strict their policies were. It protected the trees. That's what it was meant for. And the mitigation scale worked, funding worked. So it has to make sense. Everything in that plan should flow. There shouldn't be any questions of how something operates after that's written, because it is a beautifully laid out plan that just from start to end, if you read it, it's not like a horrible read because it flows through everything. It's very important, those plans.
Okay. So we'll look forward to hearing from you about that. All right. Next thing on the agenda, discussion of palm tree on Charles Street relocation.
So, like we spoke about, I've reached out, to the individual who requested. Yeah,
I have so much else to do, but that was really what I wanted to.
thank you so much for attending.
Thank you for allowing me to come and speak, and
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming.
I really appreciate it. Thank
You have a
so
wonderful
much.
rest of your day.
Bye-bye.
So we have spoken about, that there was an individual that had reached out, to talk about the palm tree at the corner of Boundary and Charles that has the face carved into it. The artist who carved into it is no longer with us. They're deceased, and they were looking, first they were looking to see if we can transplant the palm tree, which I believe is a 35 to 40 foot sable palm. It's a fully mature palm tree in the right of way there. And they said if that was not possible, they would love to look into a memorial for the artist. So I have sent out an email to invite them at our next meeting, and if they could not attend, to at least give us some summary of what they envisioned for the memorial, if that's the way they wanted to go, and a little bit more backstory on the artist as well, so that way we can incorporate their story into the memorial as best as we can. Location wise, it's kind of hard just because it's DOT right away. They have strict policies when it comes to what goes in the right of way. There's always, if something goes in there, it's an encroachment permit process. That's a very creative process to go through. So I know we've thrown out the idea of maybe some memorial that goes inside of the sidewalk, maybe a brick that could be cemented into it. I don't think we could put a big memorial statue in the right of way. I think DOT has a strict policy of not a concrete foundation holding something in there. So if we couldn't do it in the right of way, would there be different locations throughout the city, maybe close by in the Pigeon Point that we could think of that would best serve them?
Could you do a bench?
You could do maybe a driftwood bench, but the only thing is, we try, when it comes to our city parks, we try to keep everything uniform. And right now, we have moved to the composite benches, so obviously that would differ from what we keep. And once you start for one, for all, so it kind of mixes us up from what we have out there, we know is commercial grade versus something like that. So I don't know if you would want to do a bench, just because I feel like if you do one different bench style from what you uniformly have throughout your other parks throughout the city, you have to do for everybody else. And I don't know if we really want to go down that.
I was thinking, brick, but then I was thinking bench. I think whatever it is, it's gonna have to be a small something.
Well, I mean, the tree's relatively healthy. It's a large tree, so I think me and Isaiah were talking about it, that if you try to spade that tree in the right of way with all the utilities that are
Well, I would be more concerned about the utilities at that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know if there's. If I were-
it's a small island too, to be able to get as much as the root system as you need for it to survive, to translate. I don't think that you could.
Yeah, because if that's been there for, you said 35 years,
So,
oh yeah, that falls probably.
I would try to bring that up.
I don't think it's on the table. I think the best mode of action is to do a memorial or some sort.
So you would move the,
You thinking planet?
So I think maybe a plaque, but I've seen a lot of people, I thought of the idea of if they would want to, but again, they would come to removal of palm tree. And I don't think that's the smartest thing to do right now. But if you carved out the face that he drew, and then you kind of maybe framed it into a plaque or something like that. I've seen styles almost like the Walk of Fame, having it into the slab of concrete itself. They're at the location, but again, it's not our right of way, it's DOT, so everything would have to be approved. They have very strict guidelines, so it limits some of the creativity that you can get into. It's not just like, hey, we want to do this memorial in a park, and we go, okay, yeah, we can do that. It's our parks. It's right away. So it depends on person who's asking for the request, if they want it in that location, or if there's a set location that maybe the artists love, enjoy throughout town. So I think just location wise, obviously with it being there, he chose that location carved into the tree. I would love to hear the backstory of that, to understand why he chose that palm tree
Yeah,
in that said location. You know, did he live in the area? Did he live in the neighborhood? And then maybe choose the park there. So that we wouldn't have to
Yeah, shame.
go through
yeah, it'd be really cool if you could. Get a public artist to maybe do a rendition of it
Mhm.
on something else. You know, I might be reaching here, but like piece of driftwood or some sort of carving.
Oh, that's
But
good.
try to do a rendition of it, so that way you could move it to a park possibly,
The art school's right around the corner.
The
too, so-
rendition of the tree,
of the carving
of the
in the
carving in the
tree.
tree.
Yeah,
right.
like a local artist could do a rendition of that. It would also help the community, you know, hey, the community's involved in it too. Setting up this memorial,
My
draw
mother-in-law
attention
also
to
works
her-
for the college, so.
yeah, draw
That'd be
attention to the parks, things like that, to wherever the park that it goes to.
Mhm.
I know we're trying to. I'm not skipping ahead, but I know we're trying to do some additions and to Rogers Street
Yeah.
Park. So that's some kind of in the area,
Mhm.
maybe, you know,
Mhm.
another thing that we could kind of do in that park as well. We've got some great artists in the city
Yeah.
that can do a lot of pretty impressive things. So it'd be great to try to see if we could get them involved.
I do really like that idea. I think it's a good community effort. Plus, it just makes sense with the location wise, the art school being there, the students, college, and then. So, and I hope I hear back. This, so. Maybe I can get some more of a backstory that we can give to the artist, if that's the direction we choose to
I
go.
love to hear the history.
Yeah, I'm sitting here trying to think of his name.
It was Gibbs
McDowell. Gibbs McDowell, that's who it is.
That's Driftwood, or
No,
that's the person that wrote the letter?
That's the person who wrote the.
Oh, okay.
We still don't know who the individual's real name is, it's just he's known as Driftwood.
That's awesome.
Gibbs has authored two books that I know of. So. All right, so
So location wise, I guess we'll see if we can do in the right of way. And then maybe we'll look at. Rogers Park as the second option.
how long is it before you hear back from DOT? Months?
Locally, we could probably hear back within a day or two. If you do anything, if you're adding anything in there right away, it's an encroachment. So that process could be days, weeks, months. They could deny you off the bat. And you have to keep submitting, deny you off the bat, submitting. So, yeah, I mean, it is their right away. They have their policies, guidelines, they follow for a reason.
So if they say no the first time, you can resubmit.
You might have to make adjustments to the plan. You know, they might be very specific in the reason why they're denying your encroachment. Go back, change some things, and resubmit, and then maybe it gets through, or maybe they go, no. Sorry, we just don't want it in the right away. They do hold the right. So, to answer your question, it could be quick, it could be very lengthy. I know it was a very long procedure for when the palm trees were planted on Craven Street. I think that encroachment permit was anywhere from like 8 months to a year process of denial.
Yeah, that's a long time.
Okay, so location, we're gonna look is right away. And then I think So
How soon would you submit to the DOT?
first, we would have to know what. So if the person who is requesting gets back and has somewhat of an idea of a memorial, what they would like to see, then we can say, okay, this is something we would like to do. We would put it here, then we can take that information, give it to DOT. But without any information, I mean, I can't go to DOT and say, hey, we're thinking of doing this. They're gonna go, well, it depends on what you're doing.
I can, I mean, I know Gibbs. Married to a friend of mine, I can call him and ask him. I'm gonna do that. So,
For location, we'll look in the right way, or we'll look at a parking area, unless, like I said, the person recommending has other locations, maybe. Because I know that was an email as well, of they want to transplant the tree to a different location, so maybe they have somewhere in mind already. So right now, I'll put location wise, we'll put the right of way and routing street.
Okay. And I'll tell him that we can't, did you tell him that we can't move the tree?
Yeah, I think that, yeah, extremely difficult. Same with palms, especially that height, success rate for transplanting is not very high. I'd say about 10-15%.
It's pretty rough. I mean, if it was one of those little sago palms,
Yeah.
you could rip those out, and put it wherever.
Yeah.
Sables are different.
Right.
Plus we'd have to brace the tree. Have to drill it. Ways, then I'll drill it way.
I was thinking it's,
You make a
it's
box.
30 feet high, I mean,
Yeah.
that's,
That part's just an arbor brace kit
Yeah.
that you would wrap around without puncturing the actual
Yeah,
tree.
okay. Phase 2, Southside Park Community Center,
So-
community garden rather.
So they are looking to bring the community garden to PTAC. Phase 2 as well, they're gathering information of what people want. And then it should come to you guys after that, but they wanted, the first thing they knew that they wanted to implement was the community garden. So they wanted PTAC to come up with ideas of different styles of community gardens and what works and what doesn't. I know in your line of work, you've worked in some places that have, like Sun City, I know with the greenery they had, their community gardens there, certain locations have their own community gardens. So like in your professions, and expertise, have you seen community gardens? What do they do differently? What works, what doesn't work? Because I think the grand idea is this is gonna be a public community garden. I think they're gonna work with Clemson Extension originally to try to implement and get it built. But I think they want the idea, not this 100%, but it's being thrown around that maybe public come have a bed, plant their tomatoes, plant whatever they want there. And with some obviously ornamentals thrown in there. But nothing set in stone. So obviously they're coming to you for recommendations. So
I have never been involved in a community garden.
Planter boxes are pretty crucial, we
Right.
build up planter boxes. I think being able to have a spigot
Oh, water.
to each planter box. That's always been successful. I think one of the successful community gardens that I'm currently involved in one of my communities would be Celadon. They have a community garden. They have a raised, wall on the outside, a gate with a sign and everything. Obviously, you go in and there's planter boxes. They've got their water there.
can you get us pictures of it?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Do people claim their box? Do they put their name on their box?
I haven't walked in to actually inspect that deeply, but I can look at it to see.
I ask that because one of the things that goes through my mind is other people going in there and taking produce or even taking ornamentals that don't belong to them.
That part right there throws up a red flag to me, just because if, the location of this park and how many different neighborhoods and stuff are around there.
Yeah.
And then when you say it's public, how do you police that? Or
Yeah.
how do you not allow that to become kind of like a madhouse.
Yeah.
You know, the other one too, which this is next level, but Sea Pines. They have a community garden and there are people there that I'm pretty sure they have their name on it. But they'll go and they'll set up lawn chairs and music and they'll just kind of hang out there, you know, I mean, but there's gotta be some sort of system in place. And somebody that's gonna be in charge of it, so that way it just doesn't become a free-for-all, because that would be my biggest concern.
I would think it would have to be fenced. Like like you're seeing in other places, fenced. You know,
You have deer itself, that sounds like, yeah, so
oh, there you
the
go.
netting, you know, you would have to, anything that you plan, you would probably wanna net, or you would want to invest in some sort of netting above where the
Yeah.
fence is. Want it to
Yeah.
be fenced in.
Yeah, like a 7 or 8 foot fence. I know these things, I have deer.
And I mean, I feel like one of the ways to police it possibly would be to maybe charge a fee, like a small fee for a plot, so that you could claim it.
And that would help with the expense, the
Yeah.
overhead.
Get a monthly fee, or, you know, if you wanna maintain this. In the spring, that person pays the fee and they're in charge of the maintenance, the soil, the watering. That way you'll have people coming to you. That are planting there, they actually wanna do it, they're invested in it, so it'll be more organized, it'll be more. Pleasing to the eye because they're invested.
Also think too that if that's the way they want to incorporate, or if it's just gonna be an ornamental community garden, that there's stuff that maybe we need to research and look into, you know, locally or, you know, within a few counties, what works, what people have done, if people have done the same thing in other places.
Well, if there's deer, it's gonna be kind of restrictive as to what you're gonna be able to plant. That isn't gonna get chewed up, yeah,
That's, you know, that next day they're gone.
I know. Have 2 acres of gardens and
Deer repellent doesn't have very much as they say.
It does not, and you honestly, you have to put it down almost on a bi-weekly basis.
Yeah.
You know, I have tried things, one of the communities that I manage right now, Battery Shores, they have sprinklers, motion sensing sprinklers. And as soon as anything comes within a certain amount of feet of the sensor, that thing shoots straight stream at you. I know that because it did it to me. But also you can have the solar lighting, that is, motion detecting.
did it work? Did the sprinklers work?
Oh, yeah. Like I stepped up along the line and it went.
Well, it got you, but did it work for the deer?
So far,
It
yeah,
has?
they did a very large replanting at their entrance right there. Right next to Holmes Buford, did a large replanting, and I mean, I haven't seen a whole lot of damage so far from that.
So we have a motion light in our yard that is on quite a bit because the deer are, you know, just bedding down in another acre there. So,
Well, you've also got the solar motion detecting lights that you can put down, so it's however many lumens, and so if they were to step, then you know, spotlight. Again, that's only gonna work for a certain amount of time before they get used to it. You've gotta,
fence, you need a tall fence.
you just gotta cage it up, otherwise you just gotta switch up your method of
Yeah.
how you're combating it constantly.
I don't think I'm gonna walk into a greenhouse.
Yeah, greenhouse would probably be a little bit overkill.
It's hard.
Yeah, I would,
That's
I'm gonna
very- that's-
research.
Yeah, that's very helpful.
So that's something we could do some research on and come up with some recommendations.
So what would they? Can't say I know a lot about this, but would they just grow? fruits and vegetables and herbs, or would they grow flowers, or?
So I think it depends on what they would wanna do. If they would wanna grow fruits and vegetables and crops, or if they would wanna just make it ornamentals like flowers and.
Oh.
In their boxes.
So it just depends what style they would, because we might see something that is different than boxes that works well, but. I do agree, I've seen most of the places that have big boxes.
And who's gonna supply the soil? I mean, that's another,
That's why I was saying, I would say whoever wants one, they would pay, fee. And they would be in charge of the soil, and everything to bring it in. I mean, are there any, maybe a dumb question, but are there any laws on what type of soil you can bring into a state park? Does it matter?
I don't think we have-
So, okay.
right,
so-
yeah. I haven't seen it.
I just know you can't propagate. Set them off live.
So what kind of timeline are you thinking about in terms of this research?
I think,
When do
'cause-
you want to plant this, next year?
so phase two is
Like
gonna be moving rather quickly.
project maybe
I would
or
say-
spring of next year or early spring, late winter
So phase two.
to have it in place?
I think phase two, they're trying to do the community garden, the two little fields and the dog park is the plan for phase two, the south side.
And the timing?
So I would assume maybe in the next year and a half, 2 years. But it depends. Because I know we've already started the process, they already have kind of the information rolling, so it could be quicker than. So I would say maybe have our recommendations within the next 2 years.
I was just, sitting here thinking, and if you have a neighborhood, I think people become very respectful of other people's boxes, space, so to speak. In the perfect world, right, because I was even thinking about like dog talk, because I know they have a community garden, they have a big.
I haven't seen theirs, but yeah,
But if it's open to the public, it's
I
different.
was gonna say not everybody's gonna non-dog talk.
Well, I mean, that's, but even with Battery Shores or other, sea pines or, well, sea pines is supposed to be too. But other
Celadon.
neighborhoods, Celadon. And I'm just thinking about if this is open to the public, wide open to the public. It may be a little more difficult.
And that's, I can, when we're done with this meeting, when I go back, I can talk to Dave and say if there's any information that they have in mind or a direction they want to go, to let me know so I know which direction we can go. But like I said, it'd be good to do some research, see what we like, what we don't like.
let me open up another bag of worms here, where they landed, how did they land on the community gardens? So there other options that they talked about?
So when we did
instead?
the survey for Southside Park, the master plan, one of the big things that came up was the community garden. So we tried very, to follow that line of what the community wanted. So that way when we implement a plan, we're just not throwing things out there. This is what the community asked for, so this is what we're gonna try to implement into phases. So I think just because of how large the master plan was, Southside had to be broken up into 3 to 4 phases. Just because funding, I think the funding was like over $6 million for the phase one itself. So it's a long process, you need to find all the funding for it. I think phase two should be hopefully a bit less, like just implementing a new playground. But you never know. There's a lot that goes into a drainage and dog park upgrades and stuff like that. 2 athletic fields going in there. I think it should be standard, kind of like, for miles, kind of like that, not to be connected. That's the plan. But community garden is one of the big things that people ask for. But like I said, I'll see if there's a direction that they kind of know they want to go or have an idea of where they want to go. So I can see that information, yes.
Okay, next thing on the agenda is Rogers Street Park.
So I know we and I examined that on site, and obviously I showed you these pictures that I took on site of what it looks like currently, and then implementing what we and they discussed. In the design, so if you want to take another peek at that, that is your work of these parks assessments, and that's showing that this is how these assessments can help in changing what the park looks like into what it can be. I'm currently working right now on talking with Nate and seeing if we can get irrigation tapped into the park, so we can implement the flower bed. And then I have to order the park bench, so that way we can move the slab of this. It's gonna be nice to actually take these assessments and implement that, so.
I was in that neighborhood not terribly long ago, and, you know, if you blink your eyes,
Oh, you're gonna
this.
miss it.
You totally miss this, don't even know it's there. It's tiny.
Like I told you, when we first took it over, because I believe when they built those 4 or 3 houses there, it was put in there that that last parcel would be open space. And so the homeowner owned that house there, maintained it, so we never thought anything of it. It was just the agreement that when we sold the house, stopped taking care of it. Like, hey, you have a park there, and I remember I started probably a year after they got that property. We never did it. It's on Rogers Street, Lafayette. We had that.
If I was that homeowner, I would love this.
Yes.
Oh, yes, I mean, what a gift.
And like I said, you can see the benches in full sunlight in that park, you know, from early morning until sunsets in full sun. So I think Isaiah's idea, moving it over into the shade is great, just because it's a nice little pocket, a bench in there. It just fits perfect.
Isaiah, you had some great ideas. Kudos to you. Good eye.
And then obviously, you know, when we implement the bed, once the irrigation's figured out, I would like you guys to like. And then I'll work on Nate with the name. See if there's a set name set for it. We'd have to look at the files to see what was agreed upon. If not, I do like your idea of pushing your.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that, but I don't know if I should do that now or.
Let me get the information
Okay.
first. But I do appreciate, I think the research that you put into it is sound, and I think it's a good argument to even change the name, because there is not a name sign there. So I think if there was time to want to put a park sign there, let people know this is city owned park, the research is there to back why. So I think that I appreciate having that, and it's gonna be good to know that if it's not named anything, that we have reason to.
Yeah. So in your archives at work, do you have a comprehensive list of
Parks.
all the parks, playgrounds, and open
Yes.
spaces? You do? That is probably much more updated than this.
I will gladly send, I will take a note of that.
Yeah, I think it'd be helpful if everybody had this list. That was just because one of the things that we're talking about is assessment of city parks.
So
So,
I'll get you the list of parks. Views, Spanish mall shops.
and the address, you know, the address or the location of them. In fact, well, might be my own copy. This is what we used years ago. You know, because some of these parks may not be used. And it may be. Do the copy here?
There is one. Like I said, I have the updated, I think there is some parks that were added somewhere, it's not like, updated. But, so that's fine.
Very excited on these.
A lot of meetings
Yeah,
there.
Show me that.
A lot of meetings.
A lot of meetings.
I love the addition of the flowers the greenery did at Burrell.
Yeah.
That was really great. I know they've been pushing for that for a while. I think that's great that they let them do that. That color right there, as soon as you come to the light,
Yeah, pop.
really catches your eye. That was great.
Anything else on the Roger Street Park?
Excited, I just got some information that I'll get out there.
Okay, new business,
So I do have 2 items to bring up for new business. It was brought to my attention that I believe Leadership Beaufort is looking to plant 2 live oak trees at Cuthbert Park. And that's on Cuthbert Street. It's actually right around the corner from Rogers Street Park. If you go down Lafayette, it will bring you to Cuthbert Street on the right-hand side. I believe it's the last right before you come around the bend. And it's all the way at the end. The thing that I'd like to bring to your attention is that the live oak is a landmark tree. That view opens up to the backside of the river. And homeowners have had our complaints of their line of sight from their home being blocked. So there was a lot of tree pruning that we did. There was a lot of hazardous trees that we put there. And with a landmark tree, it would be very hard to prune them. Obviously, if we're planting them, we wouldn't want to block or obscure the view that changes what that park really is.
I'm trying to think, is this at the end of,
So if
and
you,
there's not much at that park,
no,
right?
so
It's just-
there's 2 concrete benches that are there, and we built and installed 2 new swing benches that face one side of the river, the other one faces the opposite side. There is, I think, a little free library that's there, but also there's a main drainage pipe that runs that entire street's drainage through that park. The live oak.
There's not that much greenery in that park, is there?
No, so obviously with live oaks, one, their aggressive root system, you would be afraid of any of the utilities underneath being destroyed. 2, the grass there would be dead because you'd be competing with it. And the tree will win. So 3 is obviously the view. You don't want to upset the homeowners that are there and all the work that we put into to make that park such a beautiful view. You don't want to obscure it. I'm not opposed.
So where do you plan to plant
I didn't think- I
trees?
didn't
So that's my thing is if they want to, I would love to look for a different location other than that.
Other
'Cause I
than
do believe-
Cuthbert?
Yes, because I believe, I don't want to say no to them, and that's not the objective. I think that any tree is right tree, right location, and I think that's the wrong tree for the wrong location. I do believe in planting trees, but I do not believe in planting trees in the wrong location, especially the wrong tree, just because. So,
So where would you plant it? What do you think?
there's so many trees, especially in the Pigeon Point area, that we've planted over the last 5 years. We've touched pretty much every park there. I would say you have the boat landing that's about to go under construction rather soon, so maybe there's something that can be implemented there.
Where, at Pigeon Point?
So I don't know if,
You're gonna water them?
yeah, they would be put into a water schedule. And then that's also, it's 2 trees that obviously we have to add to the list that we have to make sure is the knives. Which, that's not the biggest of the deal. I think for us, it's just trying to find the right location. They're set on having 2 live oaks. then selecting the right location for the trees. That fit.
What's the group who's doing this?
So it's Leadership Beaufort.
Oh, it's.
Managers or a certain class of them?
I think it's a class. The
Oh,
class.
this class, oh, okay.
Within the city of Beaufort.
So I'm all
Yep.
for, the idea of it, but I just think I'm a big proponent of right tree, right location.
Sure.
It's just like I wouldn't want to put a live oak underneath a 15-foot, 20-foot power line. I know about 20 years they're gonna hack it to directional improvement around it,
Sure.
It's just, I think, and you have to look at these parks, especially the small pocket parks. They don't provide many amenities that the other parks do, but they provide that beautiful view that you can't catch everywhere else. And when we heard of the location, we just thought that it just didn't make sense. You're changing what that park is really meant. Plus, on the backside of that, there was so much erosion from that park that we have lost about like 15% of that park on the backside, and it's continuing. So that park is also about to go under construction to repair that. We don't know. To repair, we might lose more to fix it. It just depends on the topo survey that comes out for them. So the park may look different then, so we're trying to preserve what that park is mainly for. Beautiful street and view that it's like a best kept secret. Not many people would know because not many people are going down a dead end street. Because unless you live there or unless you live in the neighborhood, you wouldn't know that park's there. But when you visit it, the view is just breathtaking because you can see everything.
Right.
So that's something that we're trying to protect, and we're not trying to obscure it through the view of that. But I do believe that you can find the right location for trees. So this will be put on our next month agenda for us to come up. So I would encourage you guys to go out there, maybe visit some of these parks, 2 or 3 parks, and find the right location for the live
Do they both have to go into the same
thing.
planted area?
So obviously you have to think in the urban setting, you're probably gonna look at 40 to 60 foot max growth. Obviously go 35, 40 foot span.
Where are they going in as or? Their specs or,
I would assume a 30 gallon. Because really when you, like Brad says, there's really not much difference between a 30 gallon or 45 gallon. Like a couple inches, versus 8-foot tree versus a 9-foot tree, you're just getting a bigger gallon size, but 30s tend to do better, especially when you're planting them versus the higher gallon size. We had one that the Open Land Trust transplanted to Whitehall, which was a fairly, I think it was a 6-inch caliper tree or 8-inch caliper tree, a very large tree.
wow.
So,
Yeah.
but it's thriving, but it's very difficult. So that one, obviously we have a water source there readily available. So whenever we go to the park 3 times a week to clean the bathrooms, we can water it by hand without issue. But it's not the same in every different location. You would know maintaining some of our parks and contracts that it's not the same in every location.
So you really need like an open space.
Yeah.
Right?
So if we could put that on, and then just letting you know that
And not the Ladies Island Bridge approach.
Yeah.
It's gonna probably, the overstory is
because
gonna,
you have to think, one, with the live oak, it's
It's-
a landmark tree.
it's gonna spread.
So it's very protected when it comes to, I think.
Yeah.
If you prune more than 15 or 20%, you need a permit. So it is an extremely protected tree. The root system is extremely aggressive. It will tear up anything in its path, especially in its attempt to find water. Because you have to think how large those trees get, how big the root systems get. The root system is only in between the 12 to 18-inch range of the dirt. So it's not very far deep. A lot of people think, oh, tree roots go there. No, they're on the first 12 to 18 inches of surface. So anything up there, it's gonna destroy if it gets it too. So you have to, with that tree, and I love them, they're beautiful. They're what makes this location in the south very unique. But I do believe that when you put a landmark tree in, it has to be the right location.
I concur.
And it has to be in live oak.
Yeah.
Okay.
It will, I don't know if they're dead set, but that was the trees that they selected. So unless they provide me or provide Nate with other options right now, so that we're gonna try to. The second thing, so that's something we can work on in our time. The second thing is just letting you know that the next park that or location that we're gonna have our assessment is gonna be Mercy Cemetery. Mercy Cemetery, it's right across from the National Cemetery. Off
Oh,
of,
Layden?
what's that side street?
Right next to your shop,
Lafayette,
Yep,
right next to
Yeah.
what do
your
you
shop.
call it? Mercy?
Mercy Cemetery.
Oh, that's the third name I heard of that place. So some people call it the Pauper Cemetery.
Yeah,
Where?
Some call it,
Where is
Where his bike shop is.
there was another
right
name.
next to it.
It's like nobody claimed you.
Yeah.
Or something.
So the city in
Mercy, or you say Mercy, right?
in 1997, the city went into like a maintenance agreement that the properties would be maintained and upheld by the city. So Evergreen, Citizen, and Mercy is under our maintenance agreement. We just implemented a new split rail because during like January, what is Race Across America? It's January, right? So we had an issue with all the cars parking there at the families, so we implemented split rail so that none of them were parked inside to protect the grave sites. So we're not looking to change any of the grave sites or anything like that, but since now there's that nice little entryway fence, might be a good location to maybe add some flowers or ornaments to add a little bit more color, you know. I just think it's a good place to look to see if there's anything to make it look better.
Adam, forgive me, I got called, I gotta give somebody something.
I got you, sir.
Forgive me.
Thank you,
Okay.
sir.
Thank you
So-
all very much.
All right, bye-bye. So, which brings me to Bladen Street, there were a bunch of podocarpus that were dead. You know, along that cemetery.
So I will let you know, Layden Street right now, we are working with a contractor on irrigation. There is a leak under the roadway. Curb stop that they're working on. So there is contracted to fix the irrigation. But we are looking to remove the podocarpus and putting up a privacy fence. The
Oh.
podocarpus was put there as privacy screening, but with podocarpus, you want sun. And when you're competing underneath the live oaks and the Chinese elms, it's very hard to be able to get the needed sun for that. So we're looking to put up a privacy fence. So we have some contractors right now. Just seeing what direction, but it's a different change from what we've tried to do. So we try to mirror because the boundary street side has podocarpus. But if you go on the other side, it's something different mixed with like Virginia creeper. So it's not uniform across the board, but since Boundary Street
Yeah.
was podocarpus, and they were working because the podocarpus on Boundary Street is the full sun. So we are we're working on that, but that is something that we've been aware of that Isaiah knows from this time with green that we've been trying to work with the people in the cemetery, because like we said, we don't own the cemetery, but we maintain it. So
Okay,
we're working with the families there because they wanted it for privacy.
Hermitage Road.
Yes,
What road?
I have.
And what I'm talking about was, yeah, he had, Bartlett go over. And people are still parking almost on top of that roof there. And it's, you know, even on the one side, it would be helpful. On the one side going down Hermitage, you know, on that side.
Because I had told you, we spoke on the phone, that we were ordering a bunch of split rail just because we were doing the cemeteries. So when we finish with the cemeteries, we're now.
Just to protect it. I asked, actually, stopped and asked people.
South
with
Park.
cars.
Yeah, so Hermitage is still, it's, we have,
Is it gonna be treated again? Is there
So-
another treatment coming?
So I think there's still another treatment coming, but then also, Mike Murphy said that, twice a year, if we got pure arbor mulch, which is just the trees that companies come in, they cut, it's better for the tree, because it actually is the only mulch that will actually break down the soil. The artificial stuff won't, it'll just sit on top, and then you kind of mask all the nutrients from getting to the roots. So that's something that we're gonna be working with, whether we choose, we get into a partnership, because any tree company go, oh, you want me to dump my arbor mulch, but you have to pick the right one. We have to say, hey, we need just pure arbor mulch, no pine from stuck
I
with it.
I can call Action Tree. I mean, he just took a huge, massive hackberry down. And all of a sudden turned dead on James Street, very close by.
Yeah.
So, basically don't tell him to dump it there.
Yeah.
Don't tell him to dump it.
Well, no, so what we would probably want is if they can meet us on site, so we can have our crew, so that while they dump it, we're already there
Spreading
spreading.
it.
Yeah, so, because before Southside got renovated, we had unsaid agreement, I guess, through a previous way that they could dump there for once, because we're gonna use it for one project. And then every other tree company in the world saw that, and we had massive piles of mulch there. You clean up, get everything down, and then all of a sudden they come back in and they dump it. That time we didn't have cameras or anything. So that's why we kind of don't run down that slope anymore. So it's either they would deliver it to our shop and we would just put it on our trucks and deliver it out, or if they can meet us inside the same day. So
Okay.
we'll try to handle that, but, that's the treatment plan.
Okay.
He said that's the best. He said after we're done with treatment, that's the best way to make sure that that tree's health stays intact.
Okay. Very good. All right. Anything else?
Yeah, anything else?
We talked about the deep root injection.
Yeah.
Where are we at with that?
For the Hermitage or,
Yes, is that what? I know we talked about the split rail, but
so I know, so they did the first treatment on the two trees, I believe in. God, it was like October, November, I believe it was right before.
They
like,
didn't
the winter.
inject. Remember,
No, well, yeah, they
they determined not to inject
didn't inject, so
No.
what they did was,
because of the age.
it was a different,
Thing.
no, they didn't opt to go with the jet. The
Rude, something.
root excavation, yeah, they didn't decide, so.
okay, all right.
So it was something along the lines where they still had to excavate and expose the roots and break up the soil, but then they have to have organization to go.
They thought it was more beneficial to enrich the soil around the tree and around the tree canopy.
Yeah.
Than to do, it was a root collar excavation.
Call it.
Yeah. No, but they went ahead and they
They did their first year.
did the first treatment.
I think you're right, sometime within the middle of the growing season. I don't know if they'll do it in the beginning of spring, so within the next month, or like maybe in the middle of the growing season, because usually you want to do it before July or August.
Was the quote that they provided for one treatment or for more than one treatment?
I think it was two treatments.
Two treatments?
I'd have to look back, but I'm sure it was two treatments. And then that, the future plan moving forward is working with, saying that our would be the best thing to help keep the nutrients there.
Okay.
I think we got a lot to work on over the next.
Awesome.
So,
Right. Next meeting is,
I think it's April 20.
Okay, I'm gonna adjourn the meeting. Thank you.